Thank you. Each year at the Ethical Society, we organize our programs around a theme. Our theme this year is Building an Ethical Future, and in March, we are exploring the future of health. However, as Rich said, our interim director, Amy Miller, who was scheduled to speak about healthy relationships today, is sick and unable to be here. We wish her well and to good health as soon as possible. Member Kyle Nienhaus will be delivering the platform talk today in her absence with an original presentation called Get Hip to Humanism's History. Please welcome Kyle.
All right. Good morning. So yes, I am not Amy, if you couldn't tell. On Tuesday, Amy had mentioned, do we have a backup emergency platform just in case? And I said, I don't know if we have one ready, but we could come up with something. And then on Wednesday, she said, yeah, we need that. So good morning. Welcome. My name is Kyle Nienhaus. That was my great daughter doing our little core values earlier. Volunteering. Thank you, Rich, for those opening words, and Emily, those wonderful, wonderful performance. And Sean for covering for me, because I was supposed to do platform host for Amy. We had to switch it all up. And my pronouns are he, him. A couple of my adjectives are hairy and weird. So I thought we do, since it's an emergency replacement platform, do a short one. I'll let you all out of class early today. Enjoy the nice weather, cold weather. Unbelievable. And I thought I'd read a section out of the book I have coming out, which is about Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, and how his work, how I see, crosses over with a lot of what ethical humanism does. And so I'm going to read a section out of my book, The Introduction to Ethical Humanism, in that. So chapter 1, section 3, it's not religion, it's ethical humanism. Put simply, ethical humanism is the greatest religion that isn't. The R word has many definitions and implications, but what ethical humanism is not is a capital R spooky religion in the traditional God-fearing sense of otherworldly powers dictating the way of the human world and of humanity top down. The religion of humanism is simply human spiritualism, community, creativity, wonder, etc., etc. It requires no beyond in order to anchor, justify, or make sacred. Erik Erikson wrote the book, The Humanist Way. It came out in 1988. It was recommended to me by Kate Lovelady, our previous leader before James, and I devoured that book and loved it so much. A couple of quotes from him in here are, "We call ethical humanism a religion because it feels like a religion, wears like a religion, and serves as a religion. It is the organic, evolved spirituality that gives us meaning and raises us above mere animals. It is the antithesis of dogmatism and anti-naturalism, declared from the Humanist Manifesto and its successors, all the way to the simple motto, deed before creed, which is on many of your bumper stickers, I know. As we come to live, know, and understand life, we more fully develop a sense of the sacred of our own life, that of others, and life universally. Our kind of spirituality, that life is itself inherently religious in quality, another Erikson quote, is tied to our kind of morality, and as Nietzsche said through Thus Spoke Zarathustra, remain faithful to the earth. Neither of these are the otherworldly spirituality or capital M spooky morality of what is traditionally thought of religion, or capital R spooky religion. Organized humanism arrived in the form of the ethical culture movement, formally founded in 1876 by Felix Adler, at 26 years old, by the way. And it comes as no surprise that Nietzsche's thought arose parallel to Adler's. The scientific revolution had been upending the Western world for several hundred years, and the industrial revolution was well underway, bringing science up to breakneck speeds of progress by Nietzsche and Adler's time. Traditional, i.e. theistic, capital R spooky religions, never stood a chance, since their churches were all built on a foundation of slow to no progress at all. A crisis of faith was poised to hit Europe, America, and the whole world like a ton of bricks. Nietzsche, a most independent philosopher, leapt far ahead of and high above his time to seek out what is simply and yet most human. And Adler, a trained rabbi, sought to grow the future of humanity in a new garden, to create a new vessel for a new wine. That is to say, a new kind of religion, community rejecting dogmatism, spirituality without spirits, secular but not secularist, if you know what I mean, and I'll come back to that. In 1877, Adler broke ground with the New York Society for Ethical Culture, and within a decade, ethical societies were founded by his peers in Philadelphia, Chicago, and here in St. Louis. Ethical culture had a forerunner in the Free Religious Association during the 19th century in America, and its most famous member, Ralph Waldo Emerson, by whom Nietzsche was particularly influenced by when writing the book The Gay Science. And was buffered by the liberal Unitarian Universalist churches, likewise spreading across America. In 1933, the Humanist Manifesto was drafted and signed by a group of progressive, religious, and ethical leaders, the most prominent of which was John Dewey. It was updated in 1973 with an even longer list of signees, including Isaac Asimov and Sir Julian Huxley. In 1941, the American Humanist Association was founded to address humanistic values in society at large and began publishing the Humanist magazine. For the rest of the century and into the next, the AHA fought and won many judicial battles over religious rights and the separation of church and state, not only for humanists, but all citizens. In 2003, a new manifesto, Humanism and Its Aspirations, was drafted for the modern age to clarify expanded ethical stances and compel worldly engagement for humanists. As Erickson said in The Humanist Way, a spirituality that does not struggle to improve the world is not spiritual at all. I never attended church as a child, my family being not religious but spiritual, and the way you see so many people say these days. And I also never really received a proper education on religions. Didn't learn that in public school in the 90s. Until I started digging on my own when I was a teenager. Once I discovered Nietzsche, his philosophical individualism was at the forefront of my thinking. Yet, I never lost sight of the question of what the world might look like should humanity truly seek to fulfill itself. I could see, even then, from afar, that traditional, i.e. supernatural, capital R spooky religions, were squandering and perverting what is naturally religious in humanity, and wondered if a religion of the future would even make sense. My discovery of ethical humanism through the Ethical Society of St. Louis beautifully confirmed my suspicions and hopes. I found ethical culture to be a community that sought to discover and to give to others and the world with a living, creative philosophy. I was home. More than merely a church for non-theists, ethical societies are sure to be filled with intellectuals, educators, and servants of their community and all of humanity. To see ethical societies as atheist churches simply for being non-theistic is a mental clerical error. Seeing as we are all atheists about most of the gods humanity believed in, some of us just add one more to the list. Ethical culture is constructed around the positive human spirituality and is not a reactionary club of former Christians and Jews and others. I mean, not merely. But also, it doesn't follow a secularist scientism that deprives us of our natural human spirituality. Humanity has indeed warmed, and the only thing that has cooled is the old traditional, capital R, spooky religion of the old ways of thinking, which have been, as Nietzsche says, coolly placed on ice. Their ideal is not refuted, it freezes to death. That is to say, if what one is being offered turns out to be otherworldly and anti-natural, why bother? Humanism is the positive philosophical stance of humanity in life, not an abandonment of all goodness because of the belief that any values at all would require divine permission, as too many unfamiliar with humanism unfortunately think, or again, rather, don't think. Nor is it a set of unchanging commandments, dictates, or capital M spooky morals, but the totality of our flourishing, the human religious spirit par excellence. If you are one who recoils from the word religion because of a personal or worldly history of damage and abuse, fear not, for here it is but semantics. I and so many others argue that the personal religious feeling is an evolved piece of the Homo sapiens experience, predating and superior to any myth-making, fear-mongering, cultish hucksterism, or latent authoritarianism. Your aversion and recoiling is not at joy, love, wonder, awe, connectedness, etc., but the poison that all otherworldly, capital R religions, drip into the human religious spirit. To this extent, humanism welcomes and in fact is the convalescent, those seeking emancipation from humanity's origin in fearful ignorance and our millennia of enslavement by the manifestations of that ignorance. As the old saying goes, those who suck out the poison. And yes, I know that would be venom, it's just a saying, don't come at me. I'll close this part real quick by saying that if you're familiar with any of the literature around humanism, one of the really great books is Ethics as a Religion by David Muzzy, who James Hornbeck, previous leader here, did the introduction for. And it's a really wonderful book about breaking it all down, sort of like what I'm doing here, but in 200 or 300 pages. And one of my favorite little quotes from it is, "If ethical culture were not a religion, I would not be interested in it." So before I start rambling about Nietzsche here, I'm just going to cut that off. And it's pretty fascinating that we are here, and we're in a really unique place. And some people don't necessarily realize that this is the biggest humanist congregation in the world. We're the biggest, number one. And even though it started in New York 150 years ago now, they technically now have split because New York is a big city. They've got the New York Society, Brooklyn Society, I believe a couple little smaller ones broken about, but we're still technically the biggest, which is kind of neat. I know it's spring break, so a lot of the younger folks are probably off on the beach or whatever, but is there anyone here, any members here, who have been members since the Sheldon Memorial? Got a couple? Yeah, one, two. So, and if anyone else also doesn't know, this building, we started using this building in 1965. Previously, the Sheldon Concert Hall was our home, which is, I'm losing my podium. And that was let's see, where's my notes, excuse me. So the Sheldon Memorial, which is now a really great concert hall and art gallery, and I've been there many times, seen lots of shows. I used to work for several music shops, and I've stood on that stage before, and before really realizing what it was, later come to find out that was the Ethical Society. And again, I'm a huge nerd for humanism and all this history, so I find it fascinating to be able to stand on the same stage that James Hornbeck stood on, or Albert Einstein stood where I was standing. Very interesting stuff, and how connected the Ethical Society really is to big things. And that's a big part of what I wanted to kind of talk about with some of the history today. And I know we have a lot of members here who probably know quite a bit of this, but then again, it's always fun to kind of go back over and review. This building in 1965 was designed by, if you're not familiar, Harris Armstrong was his name, the architect. And I've been checking out some of his other work. You can see it all around the city. You can find it online, Google it. Harris Armstrong, it's really fascinating stuff. And I'm flipping my notes back and forth. So back to the Sheldon real quick. The Sheldon Memorial was actually built by Anna Sheldon, who was the widow of Walter Sheldon, who was our first leader, our founder, and when he died, Anna Sheldon became our first interim leader. So our first interim leader was a woman. Fascinating to know. What time we got? It's almost time. So yeah, one of the core values that the kids speak is I can learn from the past to build for the future. And since our whole theme this year is about the future, an important part of going forward is knowing that past. And I find it very fascinating. And I encourage everyone to do a little bit of digging. Recently, I've joined, where did you go? Kent, where are you at? You out here? There he is. Kent reached out to me about reviving the archive team. We have lots and lots of old books and old documents. We have a series of books that were all of Walter Sheldon's platform addresses. And they're all starting to fall apart because they're quite old. So we're working on getting those preserved, getting digital copies of them made so that we can all access them without getting our fingerprints on them. And so my point there is that I think we need maybe one or two more people. If anyone is interested in being a part of that, talk to Kent or talk to me after this, if you can catch me, because I have another meeting. I'm a very busy day all of a sudden. And so, hey, kiddo. So building for the future is what we're here for. And I will now have been a member 10 years in November, and I'm very glad to have been a part of this community. It was interesting to find, and interesting to find out that I was secretly a humanist and didn't know it. Alan had mentioned that in the forum this morning, and lots of people have said that before, that what we do is, just good work, and that's what we try to do. It doesn't. We don't have to have a roll call, you might say. We don't all have to have name tags in order to be humanists. It's just what we do and how we do it better and how we treat people. And part of that is, as we've gone through. Last year, before James left, he ran the Activist Academy, which was a very interesting learning experience. We learned a lot of history about protests and how to put them together. And I found it pretty fascinating to learn more about the history, because immediately we learned a couple of things that we could more accurately and effectively use for our campaign. And so every little bit that we learn about the past helps for the future. And I hope that I didn't bore you all too much today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, Lorelei clearly approved Kyle. All right, let me get to my page. All right, well, thanks again, Kyle. It's always good to learn about the history and the beliefs of ethical humanism, and I hope you all feel a little bit more hip to humanism now after that conclusion. We are at collections and announcements. The ushers will now take up a collection to support the society. If you are moved to make a donation today, we appreciate anything you may be able to offer. We rely on the generosity of our members and friends to ensure our community can keep providing our many free programs. If you don't have cash with you today, you can donate at ethicalstl.org/donate or use the QR code on the screen now, or even better, become a pledging member. Join our community. If you are interested in joining the Ethical Society, our membership coordinator, Laura, and is she in the audience? Not there. Well, you can talk to me and I'll introduce you to Laura. We would love to keep you informed, or Laura will be available afterwards to answer your questions. We would love to keep you informed about future events at the Ethical Society of St. Louis. If you'd like to join our weekly newsletter, use the QR code above to sign up. You can also sign up on our website. All right. We do have a few announcements today. Musical announcements for Armando. Again, a repeat. Ethical Voices meet again this Wednesday, March 22nd from 7 to 9 p.m. in the Hankey Room. We welcome all voices and levels, so if you love to sing and want to hang out with some great people, come join us. And there is still time to sign up for our open mic night, which is April 6th. Do you have a talent you want to share? then remember to sign up to Shine either on the bulletin board or by emailing Armando at abayolo@ethicalstl. Our show is Thursday, April 6th from 7 to 9 p.m. in the auditorium here with a BYOB happy hour from 6 to 7 in the Becker Room. A splendid time is guaranteed for all, and I would love to see all of your talents, so please volunteer. All right, we are now up for our third and final musical selection, which will be a medley of Three Little Birds and Stand By Me, respectively by Robert Marley and Ben E. King. Give her a hand.
I've never heard that, Robert Marley.
It's an inside joke between